What's up everyone, my name is Gary Blackwood, welcome back to the vlog. Look, are you here to see what I had for breakfast? No, you're here for poker, so let's bring you poker. We're playing 2-5 in the lovely Victoria Casino in West London. Straddle sometimes on tonight, sometimes not on. Let's get into the action. On to our first hand of the day, I've got Jack 10 off in the small blind. It folds all the way around to me, no straddle this hand, and I raise it on up to £20. The big blind is a local pro, he plays all the big games that run here. He makes the call, and we'll go heads up to 10-9-6 with two clubs. This is a pretty connected board. Even though we've got top pair, it's pretty hard to play this one out of position. So I decide to check it on over to my opponent, see what he wants to do. He does check it back. The turn is the deuce of hearts, nothing really changes, and then I bet out for £30. My opponent thinks for a few seconds, and he makes the call. The river is the king of spades. I think he's going to bet all of his king jack, king queen, and queen jack on the flop, so I'm not too worried about him connecting with this king. So I bet again for £75. He makes a pretty quick call. I turn over my hand, and he nods and mucks his cards up £120 after just 3 minutes. That's a pretty good hourly. Let's see if we can keep it going. The game is not great to start. It does get a lot better later in the night. In my quest for action, I tell the tight player to my right to straddle so I can blind raise to £20. He obliges, and I put on the blind raise. Under the gun is going to limp in for that £20. The button is a reggy looking fella. He makes it £100 to go. I look down at pocket fours in the blind raise. Easy call for me here. Want to go three ways with the limper, but the limper just lets his hand go. We go heads up to the flop. It is 8-5-5 with two diamonds. I do have the diamond in my hand. I also have a club in my hand, which does block 5-4 suited. Not massively relevant, but I am thinking about my blockers already. The button is going to c-bet for £100. Nothing else I can do here other than make the call. The turn is the deuce of clubs, and he bets again, this time for £300. I think we have to just fold our hand now. A little anticlimactic. Was hoping for a set of fours with the blind raise, but it's not to be. Down £150 after this hand, but not long later we're playing again. I'm in the big blind with king 10 of diamonds. Under the gun is limped for £5. No straddle this hand. And the local pro who's next to act makes it £25 to go. It folds all the way around to me in the big blind. I think 3-betting this hand at some frequency is fine, but I want to play with the limper, so I make the call. The limper gets out the way. We go heads up to the flop. It is king 10-5 with two hearts. Really good start here. I've got top two pair on a very wet board. The local pro is going to c-bet for £20. I have a very clear raise here. I make it £90 to go. He thinks for a few seconds, and he makes the call. The turn is the deuce of spades, double flush draw on board now, and I bet out for £210. Ready to shove the safe rivers. There are few and far between those safe rivers, but I'm ready to go all in if I get a call here. He does just let his hand go. A little disappointed. I wanted to shove the river if it was a safe one, but it's not to be. Action is coming thick and fast because just 5 minutes later we're in action again. I've got jack 8 of clubs in the hijack. Under the gun is limped for £5. He's a pretty loose goose, so I make a bit of a loose isolate myself. I make it £20 to go in the hijack. The big blind is going to make the call. Haven't played any hands with him so far tonight. And the limper calls as well. We go three ways to the flop. Pretty good start here. It is jack high with two clubs. It checks it on over to me, and I think my hand is way too strong to check back, so I see bet for £40. And both players make the call. The turn is a very pleasing king of clubs. Really happy with that, but a little concerned when the big blind leads out for £100. The limper gets out the way, and I think raising here is completely fine, but I haven't seen this guy play a hand in the first 35 minutes or so, so I'm going to proceed with caution here and just call. We go heads up to the river. It's another king, board pairs. He plays with the chips for a few seconds, picks up some, ready to bet, and then adds some more, and finally settles on betting out for £250. Given the fact he looks quite strong here and the board is paired, I think we have to just shut our eyes and call. I don't think we can raise. Good thing I didn't decide to raise. He's actually got queen 7 of clubs. This is a bit of a nasty flush over flush cooler, and what's worse, it's going to send me down £470. Not off to the best start so far here tonight, but next up I'm going to pick up ace queen of diamonds in the small blind. Very playable hand. Early position is limped in for £10. The straddle is on this hand. It folds all the way around to me in the small blind, and I make it £60 to go. The limper thinks for a few seconds, and he makes the call. We go heads up to the flop. Really good start here. It is ace 9-5. I've got top pair on a wet board again. I see bet my hand for £75, and my opponent instantly moves all in for about £300 or so. I, of course, make the call. Gonna run it once here, relatively safe turn card, and then a queen rolls off on the river to give me top 2 pair. I turn my hand over, my opponent mucks his cards. Really, really nice pot coming my way, sending me close to even for the day. No hands of note for the next 30 minutes after this one. The game is now 2-5-10 though, which is always good. Next up, I'm in the cutoff with Queen Jack offsuit. I raise it on up to £30. The small blind makes the call, the big blind makes the call, and the straddle calls as well. We go 4 ways to the flop. It is Queen 7-6 with 2 spades. I do have top pair here, but I don't have the best kicker in the world, and the board is relatively wet. There are a lot of bad turns or rivers, especially 4 ways, so when it checks to me, I think we can just check this one back and see a turn. How about that? It's another queen. I've now got 3 of a kind, and the small blind is the local pro who's going to lead out here for £50. Both the other players get out the way, action back on me. I think raising is fine here. I think just calling is fine. I decide to just call, keep his range nice and wide. The river is a meaningless offsuit 3. I don't think he's going to have 5-4 suited pre-flop, and he bets again, this time for £125. I fake tank for about 30 seconds or so before raising it on up to £440. I'm really hoping he's going to hand like pocket 8s or pocket 9s and just pays me off. He goes deep into the tank. At one point, he leans over and looks at my stack. I'm a bit worried he might move all in here, but I don't think I'm folding given the sizing scheme that he's chosen on the turn and the river. Eventually, he just lets his hand go. We actually have a little conversation about this hand later in the night. He tells me that he's got Queen 10. I told him that I had Queen Jack. I'm not sure if I believe him that he actually had Queen 10. I think he's going to 3-bet that hand pre-flop a lot, but I guess we'll never know. Another nice pot coming my way, and I'm only down £3 for the night now. Really nice stuff. Next up, I'm in the hijack with Ace Jack of Hearts and raise it on up to £30. I get 2 calls before the straddle puts in the squeeze to £160. The straddle is a well-known player, but I haven't played that much with him. I know that he's quite aggressive though, and he's been quite aggressive so far tonight. Lots of pots, lots of 3-bets, lots of squeezes. So I think my hand plays really nicely as a 4-bet bluff. We can call here and have the other players behind call and go 4 ways to a flop, or we can 4-bet here. If we get shoved on, we can just fold. If my opponent folds, then great. If he does call, we get to see a flop with a reasonable hand. I make it £410 to go, and after about 20 seconds or so, my opponent moves all in. I have to suffer the indignation of putting out the 4-bets and then snap folding, down £535 after this hand. I like the way we've played it, but it's not to be. All right, next up, I'm in the straddle with Ace-3 of clubs. The cutoff is raised to £30. I make the call. We go heads up to the flop, which is Ace-Jack-Jack with 2 spades. I check to the cutoff. He's a pretty loose, aggressive guy. Happy to see him check this one back. The turn is an 8, and I decide to bet out for £40. Really surprised to see the cutoff now raises, but he makes it £100 to go. Really not sure what to make of this, but I guess we have to call. The river is a king, and he bets again for £225. Really don't know where I'm at in the hand. It's really curious what he's repping here. Is he ever going to check back and then raise a jack? A hand like pocket 8s makes sense. Maybe he's just on a stone cold bluff. I make a bit of an ambitious call on this board, and yep, he turns over pocket 8s. I think in hindsight, this is a bad call. I think I've played okay so far tonight, but this is a bit of a misstep. It's really unlikely he's on a stone cold bluff here, and on this river, I think we can just let our hand go. Still, it's done now, down about £1,000 after these couple of setbacks. And next up, I'm under the gun with pocket 7s. I raise it on up to £20. No straddle this hand. The local pro is in the hijack. He's going to put in the 3-bet to £75. And the button, who's the guy who had pocket 8s in the last hand, is going to cold call. I'm getting a really good price here with my pocket 7s to flop a set, so I make the call as well. We go 3 ways to the flop. It is 5-4 deuce rainbow. I check to the pre-flop aggressor. He checks to the button, and the button just checks it back. The turn is the 9 of hearts. I think betting out here for a small size is okay, but I check again. The pre-flop raiser checks again, and the button now takes a stab for £80. I'm definitely not folding just yet. You can make an argument for perhaps folding on the river, but I do make the call. The pre-flop 3-better thinks for a few seconds and then folds his hand. The river is a backdoor flush completing deuce. I checked my opponent, who immediately announces that he has a 9. He turns over his hand. He has cold called the 3-bet pre-flop with king 9 of diamonds and turned the best hand to take this one away from me. I can't get anything going here so far tonight. Another pot is being pushed towards my opponent, but hopefully that'll change. There's a new player that's just sat down to my left. He's a PLO guy normally, but I can tell by the way the local pros are chatting to him and laughing at his jokes that he's a bit of a loose goose. And sure enough, after about 5 minutes, I look up and he's all in pre-flop with Queen 5, winning on a Queen high board to double his 1k stack. Bear this in mind, we've got a very loose goose to our left here. I'm on the button with ace 5 offsuit for this next one and raise it on up to £30. The new player makes the call, the straddle calls as well, and we go 3 ways to king, queen, deuce with 2 diamonds. I've got backdoor straight draw and backdoor nut flush draw, and I'm on the button so I can see bet here and kind of buy myself a free river if I get called. I bet out for £30 and the loose goose makes the call. We go heads up to the turn, which is the 5 of diamonds. I've now got a pair and the nut flush draw. He checks to me and I'm definitely not bluffing this guy. I just check it back. No diamond on the river, but the ace of clubs is pretty darn good as well. He checks to me and I size up to £200 trying to get max value from his 1 pair hands. He smiles at me and asks if I have an ace and he makes the call. I turn over my hand. He says that's good and mucks his hand. Game much better now. A couple of loose gooses in the mix and we're hopefully heading in the right direction, maybe be able to get out the hole for the night. Next up, I'm in the small blind with king, queen of hearts. Middle position is raised to £30. I'm in the small blind and this is not a call. This is normally a 3-bet, but I'm sure you guys can work out why I'm making the call here and not 3-betting. The big blind makes the call as well. We go 3 ways to queen, 7, 6, all clubs. I've got top pair, but I'm out of position versus 2 players and it's a monotone board. So I, of course, check my hands and it checks all the way around. The turn is the king of clubs to give me 2 pair. I check again, the player to my left checks again, and the pre-flop aggressor checks as well. The river is the king of diamonds. I have made runner full house, and I decide to check my hand. The guy to my left is very likely to bet out now if he's got a club in his hand, and I can just check raise massive. Betting out here for like £70 and getting called is fine, but I want to check raise my hand massive because I know he's never folding. Both players turbo check back, and I have to suffer the indignation of saying, I got it, you guys, and turning over my full house. The pre-flop raiser looks at me as if I've got 2 heads as I turn it over, so I tell him that I was afraid of the royal flush. He genuinely believes that I was afraid of the royal flush and I didn't want to bet my hand. Lovely stuff. Down about £980 here so far tonight, but soldiering on. And next up, I'm in the big blind with ace 4 of hearts. Under the gun has limped in and a loose player raises to £30 in the hijack. I'm in the big blind. I want to play with the limper, so I make the call and under the gun calls as well. We go 3 ways to ace, 9, 6 rainbow and it checks all the way around. Kind of happy to see that with my weak top pair. The turn is the deuce of hearts, full rainbow board now. And I think leading out here is fine, but we do want to protect our checking range with the weakest top pairs in our range. So I check this one over to the hijack who bets out for £45. He is the pre-flop raiser. I make the call, the other player gets out the way. We go heads up to the river, which is an offsuit 10, and he bets out now this time for £150. Now, when I had the ace 3 of clubs earlier and he bet the river and I paid him off, he was looking at me immediately after he bet the river. So I take a quick look at him in this hand, and sure enough, he's looking at me again. So I decide to make a very disciplined fold here. I let go of my weak top pair. This guy likes to show his bluffs. He showed a crazy 10-9 of clubs bluff earlier in the night, but he's just mucking his hand face down here. Really happy to see that. I didn't want to see him turn over Queen Jack offsuit or something. I think I'm playing okay. I just can't really get much going. Next up, I'm in the big blind with ace 9 of clubs. Under the gun is called. The player next to act raises to £25. I don't see this, and when it folds around to me in the big blind, I announce raise and throw out £25. The dealer is just like, dude, what are you doing? This guy raised. That's just a call. I'm like, oh, sorry guys, didn't see that. The limper gets out the way and we go heads up to ace, deuce with 2 diamonds. The original raiser is going to bet out for £15. And I, of course, make the call. The turn is another ace. Really nice turn card here. I checked my opponent and he bets again, this time for £30. I fake tank for a few seconds and then I make the call. How about the 9 of diamonds? Shout out Ben a bad beat. What a river this is now. I should just lead out here for like £300. He's never folding an ace. He might actually just check back an ace now. I really should just lead out. I stupidly decide to check, and my opponent snap checks back. When I turn over my hand, he jokingly says, "Oh my god, wow, what a check back. I'm so good, what a check back I just made." I think he's just needling me. I don't think he ever had an ace. He's just using this bet size on the turn to fold out my flush draws. A small pot coming my way, but a very, very fun one. Runner, full house. But yeah, like I say, I really do think we should just lead out for a huge on the river there. All right, next up, I'm in middle position with Jack 10 offsuit. I raise it on up to £20. The small blind makes the call. He's the guy that I folded my ace 4 of hearts to a few minutes ago. We go heads up to the flop. Good start here. It is Jack 10-5 rainbow. He checks to me, and he's a relatively loose player. I know he's going to have some hands that connect with this board, so I decide to size up to £35. My opponent makes the call. I make another full house. The turn is an offsuit Jack. Dream turn card here. I decide to bet £75. This serves two purposes. One, I get value from his 10x and his draws, but it also induces a raise from this loose aggressive player if he's got a jack, which is absolutely what I want. I don't want to bomb it here and have him just call his jack X here. So I bet £75 and he makes the call. A little disappointed he didn't raise here. And the river is a very annoying 10. If he does have a jack, we're chopping now. He checks to me. I bet £275, just trying to get max value from a 10, but he does just snap fold his hand. This is like the fourth full house that I have made tonight. How the fuck am I down £949? All right, moving on. Next up, I'm in middle position with King 9 of hearts. I raise it on up to £20. The button is the local high stakes pro. He makes it £80 to go. And once again, the big blind is going to cold call. This is like the fourth time this exact scenario has played out tonight. Bit of a loose call. I was folding versus the button anyway, but I want to play with the big blind, so I make the call as well. We go three ways to the flop. It is ace 5-4 all red. Have I flopped the nuts? Nope, but I do have the nut flush draw. We check it on over to the button. He bets £150. A pretty telling size tell on this texture with the big blind in the pot. I think he's going to have a very strong hand here very often. The big blind does get out the way, and I decide against raising with my nut flush draw here. I just make the call. We go heads up to the turn. It is the deuce of diamonds. I got really excited. I thought I'd turn the nuts there, but it is a diamond, not a heart. I check to my opponent and he bets £400. This is really tempting to call, but we are out of position. And what do we do if we miss? Do we ever lead out? If I get there, do I lead out? Or, if I get there and it goes check, check, it's a bit of a disaster. I decide against drawing to the nuts here. I just fold. In position, I'm happy to call, but out of position, I make a very disciplined fold. This feels like one step forward, one step back. Every time I win a pot, I'm losing one back. Can't seem to get any momentum going here tonight, but we're going to keep grinding on. Next up, I'm under the gun with King, Queen of clubs. I raise it on up to £20. Going to get two callers from the button and the small blind. We go three ways to King 4-3 with two spades. I'm going to c-bet my hand here for £30 and the button makes the call. The turn is the 8 of diamonds. Nothing really changes on this turn. And I bet again, this time for £100. The button makes a very quick call and we see the 4 of diamonds roll off on the river. I think betting my hand is fine here, but he's going to have a lot of bluffs. Hands like ace 5 offsuit, 5-6 suited, miss spade draws. So I decide to check, see if he'll bluff at it, but he snap checks back. I tell him I've got a king. He says king is good, and I'm dragging in another small pot. These traps don't seem to be working here tonight. Maybe I should just bet out my strong hands for value. Speaking of strong hands, next up I'm in the big blind with ace-king offsuit. There's a very tight, very passive Eastern European player. He's barely played a hand all night. He raises it on up to £15 from middle position. The small blind is another non-pro. He's going to make the call, and I put the price of poker up to £80. Action is back on the Euro fella. He thinks for a few seconds, looks at me, and then makes it £230 to go. Guys and girls, I cannot stress how tightly this guy has been playing so far tonight. Now, after he 4-bets, the small blind gets out the way. He's got about £900 behind. I really don't want to shove here. I think he's super strong, but I guess we can't fold either. There's only one thing we can do. I make the call. We go heads up to the flop. It is ace 5-4 with two spades. Really, really good start here, flopping top pair. I checked my opponent and he bets out very small for £125. You can definitely make an argument for raising here, but I don't think he's ever going to have a flush draw. I don't think he's going to 4-bet with a hand like king jack of spades or anything like that. And if he's got a hand like queens or kings, we're just going to scare that hand away. So I decide to call. The turn is the 6 of spades. Like I say, I'm really not worried about him having any straights or flushes on this turn card. I checked my opponent and he bets £250. I am really, really worried about this. It sounds crazy. There's one combo of pocket aces possible, but he just looks so strong. His hand is covering his mouth and his eyebrows are furrowed. I'm really worried about him having pocket aces here, but obviously I can't fold my hand just yet. I am seriously considering making a hero fold on the river if I need to. To the river we go. It is another ace. Total relief. It's almost certain that he's got ace king as well now. I checked my opponent. He moves all in for £450. I'm of course never folding now. I make the call. He turns over ace 4 of diamonds. What the hell is this? He hasn't played a hand in about 2 hours. On the rare occasion he does play, he's limping in and then folding versus the isolate. I cannot believe he has decided to 4-bet out of nowhere with ace 4 of diamonds and found this board versus my ace king. I am stunned. As I muck my cards, the dealer counts out exactly what I owe him. This pot is worth £2,125. And it's going the way of my opponent. How do I lose on this board versus this type player? How is this not a chop? Oh well, what can you do? Nice hand. I top up my stack and tell myself that's it. I am leaving in my next big blind. Not before I play one more hand. It's the very next hand. I look down at pocket tens in the small blind. A rather tight pro has raised to £30 in the cutoff, and a rather loose passive recreational player has 3-bet to £100 on the button. I don't love it, but the recreational player's got about £150 behind after the 3-bet, so whatever, I cold 4-bet to £230. This allows me to fold if the cutoff moves all in for his last 700 or so. Sure enough, I get exactly what I want. The cutoff folds. The button moves all in for £260 total. I call for another £30. And he's got pocket aces. He asked me, do you want to go once or twice? I say, it's up to you, buddy. He says, let's go once. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Get me the fuck out of this casino. The board runs out 5, 4, deuce, ace, 9. Not even a sweat for me. I tap the table, muck my cards. Nothing else happens for the remaining orbit of my stay here at the casino. Thank God, because I was on a losing tear and didn't want to lose any more money. When the button moves around enough times that I am next up in the big blind, I tell the dealer I'm done for the day. I grab a rack. I rack up my chips. I am cordial in defeat. Nobody likes losing, but it's completely okay to lose sometimes. So I'm all smiles. I tap the table. I wish everyone luck. And I head to the cashier, a little shell-shocked, to be honest. But hey, good content, right?
Wow, that's all I have to say. Wow, I'm stunned. I'm shell-shocked at the end of that session. I felt like it was a pretty boring night. I was just bleeding away. I won a pot, I lost a pot. I couldn't get any momentum going. Completely fine. And then that fucking ace-king hand. I couldn't believe it when the guy turned over ace-4. He hadn't played a pot in about 3 hours. And I really wanted to fold pre. And then I was like, nah, you can't fold this pre. YouTube will roast you. So I called. Then I called on the flop. And then I really wanted to fold the turn. I was like, this guy's got aces here. And then the river was another ace. And I was like, all right, okay, chop it up, let's go. And he's got ace-4. He didn't play hand in about 4 hours. Sticks in the 4-bet with ace-4 and wins all the money. What a life. Right, that'll do it. I lost £2,399. It's not the end of the world. It's all good. We'll bounce back and all that jazz. We'll be back next week for more pain. But yeah, I'm a little shell-shocked, a little stunned at the end of the session, but what can you do? Right, if you could consider clicking the sub button, I'd be very grateful. My name has been Gary Blackwood, also known as Gazzy123. Until next time, take it easy.